Alright guys, it's Jahlon, and normally I would have done this as a segment on my Twitch show. I do stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do a program called Ashes 101, where all I do is talk about Ashes of Creation. The problem is, due to a couple of content creators making bad content, there is a lot of misinformation running around about Ashes of Creation. So what I want to do is I want to put this together in a video format so that it can be used as a resource. Also, I recommend going to two places. I recommend going to the wiki, and I recommend going over to ashes101.com. That's my website. Links to both are in the description if you have any questions not answered by this video. Now, with that said, Ashes of Creation does have open world PvP. However, unlike other games, the open world PvP is not meant to be the focus of the PvP in the game. One of the big things that Steven Sharif, the creative director on Ashes of Creation, says is that Ashes is a theme box, and inside of the PvP theme box, you find other PvP themes, such as the 8 meaningful PvP systems, both types of sieges, nodes and castles, both types of wars, guild and node, arenas, caravans, bounty hunting, and the enemy of the state mechanic. Now, on top of that, there are open world PvP zones which you're automatically flagged for. This includes post-siege ruins, where you're salvaging all of the goodies that come when you destroy a node, as well as all the international water. This is where the bulk of the PvP is going to happen, inside of these mostly consensual systems. But don't take my word for it. Steven Sharif, he recently posted on Asmongold's video, the overwhelming majority of players' experience with the PvP in Ashes will be through consensual systems. Now remember, while these are consensual systems, some of these consensual systems will drop on you against your will. Your guild could get war decked, your node could have a siege declared on it. You consented to those systems, just not directly. If your guild is high enough level, then you can have war decks dropped on you. If you are a citizen of a stage 3 node, then you can have sieges dropped on you. But you don't have to participate. You could drop your guild during the declaration period. You could change your citizenship of your node. Now, for all the arguments about where the real PvPers are going to be, these are the systems where the real PvPers will be. Real PvPers want good fights. They don't want to run around ganking. They want to fight over meaningful objectives, not run around the world killing randos. Now, will there be griefers who run around killing randoms? Sure, absolutely. Ashes does have a flagging system, and any flagging system, any game with any flagging system is going to have some level of random PKing. Now, the problem is a lot of people, a lot of Care Bears, and this is no insult to you, you just don't like PvP and that's okay. You call every single PK a grief, and that's just not true. Open world PvP in Ashes is a little bit different from other games. Ashes is not a opt-in game. You can't opt out of open world PvP. In Ashes, you are always able to be killed. You have a choice if you fight back or not. That will change the penalties for both you and your aggressor. Before we talk about those penalties, let's talk about griefing. Steven said, griefing is bad, and I feel we have created a system that will sufficiently deter with the potential for rampant griefing. With that said, I want to remind you, getting PK'd, getting player killed once, is not griefing. Does it feel good? No. Is it griefing? No. Griefing is when people go out of their way to ruin your fun for long periods of time. Spawn camping you is a good example of this. If a group of people kill you and then camp you at the respawn, that's griefing. I heard a big argument in Lucky Ghost's video. Denying you content is griefing. Denying you content is not griefing. A lot of people call it that. Denying you content is emergent gameplay. The complaints I heard is that people want to do this content and they're afraid they're going to have to contest with PvP players. I want to remind you, in Ashes of Creation, 80% of the dungeons in the raids are open world, 20% are instanced. If you really hate open world dungeons, there will be a place for you to go to grind, to get some limited amount of gear. Just remember, the best in slot gear, the best items only come from those open world dungeons. So what do you do if there is a dungeon you want to do and a PvP guild has it on lockdown? Well, number one, this Ashes of Creation is a PvX game, so you're gonna have to get better at the PvP part. I want to remind people as well, you don't die in real life when you die to PvP. Your graphics card doesn't blow up when you die in PvP. Why are people so afraid to die in PvP, but they'll run the same raid 87 times and wipe to a boss? What is the difference between dying to a player and dying to AI? I'd love for you to leave me a comment on that, because I just don't understand it. Another thing you can do is you can hire PvPers to clear out the dungeon. This is part of being an MMO, a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. You can utilize other people that have the capability you need. You can talk to your mayor about declaring war on the node that PvP guild is from, or the majority of its members are from. That way you create more conflict for them. They may not be able to just sit in a dungeon all day. You could talk to your guild leader about declaring a guild war on that guild. That way you can wipe them out of the dungeon without having to engage in the flagging system, because now you'll be in one of those themes. Or you could go do other content and get strong enough to then contest them. Remember, the dungeon that you're doing may be the easiest dungeon for you to get to, but it's not the only content for you to do. Now, I know people like Lucky Ghost are going to say you move to another dungeon and you're going to run into another PvP guild camping that dungeon. Yeah, that's possible. Not going to deny it. Not going to try to say that won't happen. You're going to have to recognize this is a PvP, PvE, PvX with PvP-centric game. So are there options for dealing with griefing? Yes, there are. Let's pretend, for example, that Intrepid turned off open world flagging in dungeons, because that's what a lot of people want. They want just the open world flagging to be turned off. What would happen? Then those PvP guilds that want to lock down content would just have a lot of war decks going on. They would war declare on all of the guilds in that local area so they could continue to deny that content. So even if you take away the flagging threat, you would still have the PvP theme threat to contend with. Now, what about the penalties for killing? In Ashes, there is a corruption system. It's very much like a karma system that other games have, except in Ashes, you have choices. When someone attacks you, they've made a choice, but they haven't taken your choice away from you because you have a choice. Your first option is you can stay green. If you stay green and die, you'll suffer a 2 to 3% negative XP gain. What that means is you'll have to grind off 2 to 3% of your level in order to get back your combat efficiency, your stats, your drop rate, your health, your mana. All those will be diminished while you have negative XP. You're also going to drop some percentage of your gatherables, your processed goods, and your mob drops. But the important thing here is if you die as a green, you give the other person corruption. And we'll talk about that in a second. If you choose to flag up and defend yourself, you get an incentive. You are rewarded for making that decision. That reward is you only take 50% of the penalties of dying as a green. So instead of 2 to 3%, you'll take 1 to 1.5% negative XP, and then you'll suffer 50% less in your drops. Where the PK control part comes in is you gave the green victim a choice to stick the other person with corruption. Once you're corrupted, if you die, you will suffer a 400% penalty, which means 400% of the drop. It means you will gain 8 to 12% of a level in negative XP. That drop rate will be on all your gatherables, all your processed goods, all your mob drops, and you start to have an ever-growing RNG chance to drop each piece of gear that you're carrying. You also lose the ability to trade gear, and you lose the ability to access public storage. We're assuming you can still access the storage on your freehold. Now, people always key in here on the gear drop, and their way to get around it, their magical loophole is they'll have a buddy kill you and collect the gear. Nobody pays attention to that 8% to 12% of a level in negative XP, which lowers your combat effectiveness until you've grounded off. And remember, at max level, this is 8% to 12% of level 50. in a game that takes 45 days of 4 to 6 hours a day to reach max level? Do you really believe that PKers are going to run around and accumulate that much negative XP? Because remember, every time they murder somebody, they get a kill on their soul. Every kill on their soul increases the amount of corruption they get per kill. You think there's going to be level 50s running around ganking level 20s? There's not, because there's a level disparity penalty on the corruption system. If you're level 50 and you kill a level 20, you are going to get a ton more corruption than if you had killed a fellow level 50. Now multiply that by the total number of murders you already have on your soul, and this is the big deterrent. Now, what about if you run around and wait till somebody is low health, fighting a mob, and then you CC them? Well, you can't CC somebody unless they're flagged for PvP. So if you're purple and you use a CC ability on a green, the only thing that ability will do is damage them if the ability has damage. Until a person has consensually joined in open world PvP, they are immune to CCs. But you also won't know how much health that person has. You're only going to have a vague indicator of healthy, taken some damage, half damage, taken a lot of damage, or near death. I hear the big one where a lot of people say, what if you train a bunch of mobs onto somebody who's open world grinding? Well, I want to remind you, you're not going to be doing a lot of single player open world grinding in Ashes of Creation. You'll do some farming for mats, some farming for earning off your negative XP, but for the most part, Ashes of Creation is a group-centric game. There's absolutely solo content, but you're probably not going to be doing it a lot. But that mob train is a fair question. I will say when I was a younger man and I was a different type of person, I loved goblin training people in Final Fantasy XI. I'm wondering if people believe that Ashes of Creation is a game being built with the same technology in the late 90s. Why would a mob not have the ability to gap close and catch you while you're training it, CC you, dot you, damage you? This is a developer-fixed issue in regard to mob abilities, mob AI, mob behavior, and aggro management. If you're running around and just training mobs, I think Intrepid has failed. I think Intrepid Studios has to make sure that they create a system where you can't train mobs, you can't gather mobs, you can't pull mobs without some inherent risk of being CC'd, locked down, damaged, and then as you do things like heal yourself, then you're generating aggro, which means you're not going to be able to easily pass off those mobs to somebody's AoE. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, what happens if there's a low level running around for low level protection so they could do gathering? Do you think the high level mobs and the high level resource areas aren't going to insta-pop those low level characters? I've heard people say, what about low levels that get involved in PvP? Remember, you are going to have a certain level of safety over who your AoEs hit. You can be purple, but you can have your AoE set to not hit greens. What about single target abilities? That's going to cause you to have to get better at PvP. You could also have it so that it pops a warning that you're about to hit a green. EVE Online has this. Are you sure you want to attack this person? This will incur a security penalty. Nothing saying Intrepid can't put safeties to make sure you can't hit people that are green with your abilities when you're purple, so you don't accidentally hit them. The big thing here, guys, is I'm really concerned about these content creators that are making content that's so much misinformation that they're confusing people. I am absolutely not against the content creator speaking out against open world PvP. I think that we can have a very good discussion. I would love to have a discussion with Asmongold. I know he's not a fan of open world PvP, or so says all of his fans, his followers. He thinks that open world PvP isn't good for games. It's not good when you get griefed. It's not good when you get ganked. I'd love to have a sit-down discussion with him and talk about that. Why do you feel that way? Do you think that's antiquated? Do you think those are games of the past? My wife, as a personal example, hated PvP until she got killed one too many times in Arcage, and then she did the get better at PvP route. She found somebody to teach her class in PvP. And so you take somebody who had spent the early days of their gaming as a toothless Care Bear, and you took somebody that became like, you know, a violent, aggressive mercenary who started hunting down people who found they really enjoyed PvP. I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes and share with me your opinions, your take, your feedback. Share that with me. What do you think about open world PvP? Are you afraid of it? Do you wish Ashes didn't have it? Do you want PvE servers? Let's just start talking about a lot of things and not attack people. Don't cross attack people because they have a different opinion than you. Remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much, speak half as much, and just understand the other perspectives. With that said, as I said at the beginning, I stream 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do the Ashes 101 show. If you want to pop in, we can have a discussion. Just please, when you come in, if you want to speak in absolutes, have some reference material, have things I can look at, surveys, polls, datas, videos that I can look at that, prove the point you're trying to make. And as I also said, if you need to go find more information, I have links to the wiki and Ashes 1 in the description. Until next time, you guys take care, and I will see you when I'm live on Twitch.